We live 20% of our total lifespan in poorer health than our male counterparts. Why is that?
Hey everybody, I'm Lori Scholweiss.
And I'm Jen Giamo.
And welcome to another episode of Everybody Talks, the podcast where we explore the wide world of wellness. Sometimes we talk to experts, sometimes we just talk to each other, but we're always talking to you.
Every week we discuss topics from nutrition and exercise to mindfulness and self-care, and today we are talking all about menopause.
So let's get started.
She is a physician, author, and entrepreneur who has devoted her adult life to women's health. As a board-certified OBGYN, she has delivered thousands of babies, completed thousands of well women exams, counseled patients, taught residents, and did everything an academic professor in OBGYN could do. Her educational background and her own experience led her to develop the national best-selling book and online program, The Galveston Diet.
And in 2021, as a certified menopause specialist, she opened a wellness clinic dedicated to caring for the menopausal patient. Recently, she has set social media on fire, talking about all things menopause and amassing over 3 million followers. 3 million followers.
I know.
By posting advice for women who are going through it, like us.
Exactly. Well,
some of us.
Some of us.
Anyway, her new book, The New Menopause, is out now. Please welcome our guest today, Dr. Mary Clare Haver. Yay!
Yay. We're thrilled to have you here. Thrilled.
Thanks for having me.
No, we really appreciate it. So first, I guess let's start off with you, a little more about you for those that some of the other 3 million or billion people that may not know who you are.
It's like 4 point something.
Oh, is it really?
Wow.
It's so
Wow.
Oh my God.
Like I get, people recognize me in the airport. It's like weird.
Wow.
So, yeah,
I could see that. I could see that.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
Totally. Now, what made you transition from regular OBGYN care to, the menopausal care?
So I'm 55 now, almost 56, and a lot of things were kind of happening at the same time. I really thought that was a job that I would have retired in. Like, we had no plans to leave. We still live in the same town. But I was getting older, so the hours of obstetrics, that part of my job were getting really tough. And I just wasn't bouncing back from these long shifts or overnight. I mean, if I had an easy menopause and babies came between 8 in the morning and 5 in the afternoon, I would not have done all of this. Like, I would still be over there at the hospital 3 miles away delivering babies and coming home at 5 and being a happy camper. But that's not what life served me. The other thing, and that's happening with a lot of hospital systems, is the administrative burden was just awful. This went from a kind of community-based hospital to a big corporation and multiple layers of like administration. And it just became about profit and not about patient care. Like, we were expected to do good patient care, but like the ethos of the hospital was make more money, make more money, make more money. Yeah. And that's just the economic reality. And my husband and then I was going through menopause. So I'm realizing something ain't right, with my health. And I don't know what I don't know. And I don't know anything. I don't know enough to really take care of myself, let alone my patients. And no one knows, they're just little silos of people who have been doing great menopause care for years, but they're like 1 in a million. So I'm like, okay. And my husband, I got into nutrition because of my weight gain with menopause, and that's how the Galveston Diet was born. But as I was talking about, how a menopausal person should approach their nutrition and lifestyle, just the questions that were just pouring in, and I was learning so much about, what about my frozen shoulder? What about my itchy ears? What about my, sexual dysfunction? And I started making friends with these other clinicians, Kelly Casperson, my menopause now, Vonda Wright from the orthopedic surgery world, we're all just kind of like tapping each other offline and then going to conferences together and meet, and so then all of a sudden I'm not alone in this. I'm not screaming into the void on social media. I have all these backup people with me. We all believe the same thing. And I'm like, okay, I'm not crazy. This is messed up, like we can do better. And so in 2020, I was a hospitalist. So I left the big institution, went and became a hospitalist in 2018. So I could write the Galveston Diet and kind of back off on those hours a little bit. And then COVID hit. And so I've never worked more hours in my life. And I was grateful to like be helpful and useful during COVID, but I was in a small community hospital by myself and it was tough. So immediately, like once COVID kind of calmed down and I didn't feel like I was leaving the hospital in a lurch or would hurt patient care, I was like, I got to get out of here. Like I can't, this was not what I thought, like, and what if I opened a menopause clinic? Like, would that even work? I took my girlfriends out to dinner to like float the idea of would a menopause focused care clinic that wasn't a hormone clinic, that was more about lifestyle and nutrition, I guess more holistic or functional, though I have no formal functional medicine training. It's just me. And they're like, absolutely. And my husband said, honey, just do it. If you fail, you fail, but you won't know till you try. And we're financially in a place where it's going to be okay. You can always go back and deliver babies and do pap smears. Like, you'll always have a job. So I did it. So in 2021, I opened the menopause clinic, Mary Clare Wellness, and got busy writing a new book. And here we are today. We're now a clinic with 3 clinicians. I'm starting a training program to go worldwide to teach clinicians how to do menopause care. I've written the new Menopause coming out, all about menopause, to educate everyone as much as I could, on how to take care of themselves, how to advocate for themselves.
Yeah.
And so that's where I am today. And then my social media is exploding.
The social media is amazing. I mean, it's like whatever the secret sauce you have. But why do you think it took so long? I like the part of your book where it told like the kind of the history of menopause and how long it took.
I felt like people needed to understand the state of the state. And me just saying it sucks for you, but so many people want to know why. Why do I walk in my doctor's office and they can't help me? Why do they dismiss me? Why do they? Because it really is a function of our education system more than just having an asshole doctor. I was that doctor, me, for menopausal people. I mean, I did okay, but I was nowhere near, I was dismissing symptoms. I was saying, no, it can't be this, and so that's my passion now, is undoing those wrongs.
I want to get into that a little bit too. I know that you mentioned that about like the history of it. And the one thing that I thought was hilarious was they used to say it was described as having uterine melancholy. I was like, oh my gosh.
That they told everyone that they were crazy,
Well, hysteria meant crazy and was tied to the uterus. And people were like, our grandmothers didn't suffer. I'm like, the hell they didn't. They got hospitalized. They got tranquilized. They got shock treatment.
Yes.
My grandmother had shock treatment in menopause.
Did you really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me based on what I've been reading, but so this popularity on social media, what do you think? What do you attribute that to? Just more people are getting interested in this, or?
I think for me, it was a perfect storm. I was in the right place at the right time with the right message. I hit TikTok when people were building quickly on TikTok, talking about something no one was speaking about.
Right.
And then who knew my superpower was to take 30 seconds of someone's time and like crunch it into an entertaining video that was packed with as much validation, education. I learned so much from earlier creators on like watching what they did, and never with an intention of having millions of followers. It was like, I want to be effective here. And, you get views and your dopamine goes up and you're like, ooh, look at me.
Yeah, this is great.
Totally, I know.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kept doing the things that were working. And, I started dancing and pointing to music, to little educational. You go back in my early videos on TikTok. I was like, menopause. Oh my God. And then I'm like, why didn't I just say it? And then once I started talking, people were like, oh, that's way better. Do that.
Yeah.
It's so, I love it because you do pack so much information into these little short clips, and it's like digestible for people. And then I think it kind of, at least for me, it makes me sort of click on your bio or go like into more depth about what you're talking about, or look up the research studies and all of that stuff. So I love how you kind of condense all of that. But man, 4 million. I mean, that's just amazing.
That's amazing. A really wide reach. I mean, you really hit a nerve. Like I always say when we've talked about menopause with a couple of other people on this podcast, and I don't know if it's because I'm of that age or people are talking about it now, but now it's like I feel like it's everywhere. It was nowhere, and now it's everywhere.
And I don't know, it's certainly everywhere on my social media, but like that's the algorithm. I'm like asking my husband, do you see anything on menopause? He's like, nope.
Oh, that's so funny.
I got enough menopause right here,
Oh my God. Hilarious.
Yeah. And, to your point about like the education of doctors and things, I was reading that 50% of women in menopause said that they never knew anything about it. They didn't know anything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's true.
I mean,
me as the expert
included.
had the most rudimentary knowledge. I was shocked by him. I didn't fully grasp that we're born with all of our eggs, and that they, I'm sure someone told me that at some point, but it just wasn't like the whole process didn't make sense. I knew nothing about perimenopause. Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were never taught how to recognize it, treat it, nothing in 4 years curriculum. And I was a program director, meaning I was in charge of training the residents of their curriculum handed down to me by the American Board of OB-GYN.
Yeah.
Nothing on peri. We had a few things we had to make sure they checked the box. We didn't have any clinics or, in-depth discussions, maybe one lecture a year, so it's so big. It's all encompassing of our health.
Sure. Sure.
And do you feel like now doctors are becoming more educated around it?
No. So my daughter's a first year medical student, so she's on the way. And she the curriculum has not changed. So I left that job in 2018 and there was no menopause curriculum. And I have friends who are still doing that job. So they said, hey, at CREOG, which is Council of Resident Education and OB-GYN, they are now like a bunch of docs got together and like stormed the podium and we're like, we need a menopause curriculum. So it hasn't happened yet, but they're talking about it and they're hopefully going to move forward. But there is this there's in our world, in the OB-GYN world, there's old menopause versus new menopause. Okay. And the old menopause people are very much entrenched in it's not a big deal. If we tell them it's going to be a big deal, then they'll think it's a big deal. They just need a little behavioral therapy. I'm like, what the fuck? Literally these are people with PhDs saying that we need to outthink our menopause, and everything will be okay. And I'm like, how about my cardiovascular disease risk? You going to fix my broken hip? Come on.
Totally.
And then there's new menopause, which are my friends who are like, nope, not listening to you. Thank you for your service. Bye-bye. We're here for the Gen Xer. You guys screwed the boomers.
Right.
They missed those beautiful windows of opportunity because of your arrogance and your clinging to these patriarchal beliefs. We're not doing that. And we're going to go over here and use evidence to help women stay healthier longer. The end.
Yeah.
Which is great.
I mean, speaking of which, I keep bringing this up in a lot of podcasts. I'm post-menopausal. I'm 60 years old.
Me too.
And I wasn't, I have a big history of breast cancer in my family. Both my great-grandmother, both grandmothers, my mother, my sister.
Yeah, you really should be on hormone therapy because you'll decrease your risk by being on HRT.
But they never put me on, and I'm still not on because I keep asking. I'm like, is it too late? Is it too late? Is it too late? But the truth is it's not too late, right?
It's not too late. So when we look at the benefits, I mean, this just got published yesterday in the Journal of Menopause when they looked at women on HRT who continued it past the age of 65 versus stopped before 65 or never had it at all. And the women who stayed on it after the age of 65 had lower everything. Lower breast cancer, bone cancer, colon cancer, heart disease, heart attack, stroke, DVTs, all of it. And you're just health. Estrogen is so healthy in our body and it helps us fight off disease better. Now, if your breast cancer retains its estrogen receptors through the malignant transformation, which has nothing to do with you being on estrogen, you had the highest levels in your life when you were pregnant. You didn't get breast cancer, but they can use those receptors to help kill the tumor cells, right? And so, but once you're done with your breast cancer, if you're on HRT at the time of your diagnosis, you have a higher survival rate.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
so
incredible.
what? So this whole misconception came from the misinterpretation of the one study, right?
One study.
The women's health.
study that was heavily publicized. It was the #1 medical news story of 2002. It was on the cover of every magazine, every newspaper, every TV show. This is pre-internet. And everyone was terrified of it. And the headlines read, estrogen causes breast cancer. All of that's been redacted.
Yes.
All of it.
Wow. Wow.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. It's unbelievable. I just want to go back. So
and guess what?
I know.
What's the most likely thing a woman with breast cancer is going to die from? Cardiovascular disease.
Cardiovascular disease.
Yeah.
Earlier than she would have had she not gone on an anti-estrogen.
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
Wow.
So no one's having that conversation. Or how many hip fractures could we prevent?
Right.
Sure.
And early death
Sure.
from
Well,
from
I learned that,
fractures.
I've developed late onset asthma, which I just learned from your book is a symptom. I have this weird eye thing that's going on, which I just learned is a symptom. I was like, I still have things that are explainable.
So you may have lost
things.
some of the cardiovascular protection, but it doesn't mean it's harmful after 60.
Right.
It just means that women who start younger, it's more protective, right? But it's always going to protect your bones.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's always going to help in your, in other tissues in your body, in your joints, and your bones, and your muscles, and your skin, and your hair, and your teeth. The dental issues we're seeing through the menopause transition are just outstanding. It's always going to help your bladder, your vagina, your vulva, always. So there's always going to be some benefit for you. So it's something to consider.
Yeah, definitely will.
Well, since you brought that up, you talk about a lot of these symptoms, like beyond the hot flashes and the brain fog. Can you just share some of like the lesser known symptoms with our listeners?
The ones that like set the internet on fire are always itchy ears. Because it drives people crazy, and it's a combination of, we get this inflammation in the nerves everywhere, but especially in our skin. So some people feel formication, like ants are crawling on them, electrical shocks in their skin. Imagine that being in your ear canal. On top of that, very dry skin. So we have a lot more dermatitis. The transepidermal water loss is less. You have much less natural lubricant in the skin. And that all kind of gets focused in the ear canal, and it's just constantly irritating. So for those patients, two things. You could take a little bit of vaginal estrogen cream on a Q-tip and just get it in there.
Really?
And they say it's like a miracle. And topical steroids work too, but it's not treating the root cause. So itchy, and then frozen shoulder, that one just, people go crazy. Palpitations.
I know, that's like, what the hell?
Any gut changes, diarrhea, constipation, and visceral fat, belly fat. That's the one that's why people come to my office. Is like, what is this? Make it stop. I can't fix it. They can't fix it. Like everything they've done in the past. Well, I'm working out and I'm eating less and and I still have it. I'm like, I got you, girl.
Yeah.
So,
it's very hard to understand why that you have to exercise and eat differently to take that away.
It's frustrating. The most frustrated are my high level athletes. They are so used to a certain level of performance. And it's really all of a sudden, a sudden the weight gain happens for them. All of a sudden their exercise tolerance decreases. It's not like the aging where you expect, you're not 30 anymore, you're not 40 anymore. It's like boom for them overnight, and they hate it. And they, just because I think they're so used to that elite level, and then their estrogen goes away and they cannot wrap their heads around it. So it's really tough for them.
And I think
mentally.
To that point, it's also that because I sort of, can relate to that. Not that I was an elite athlete, but just in doing, things that now we're told not to do, like the eat less, exercise more. I think we were taught to do that, and that's what worked in our 20s and maybe even our 30s. And it's like, guess what, guys? That doesn't work anymore,
Yeah.
But I mean, it is crazy because I feel like I woke up one morning and I was 12 pounds heavier. I'm like, what's going on? Like, literally, I woke up the next, obviously it must have been happening and I didn't realize it. Yeah. But as soon as I went on HRT, I lost all the weight and then some. I stopped getting headaches. I'm sleeping better. All these things that I didn't.
Well, and it all compounds. I mean, we gain weight for so many. We put on visceral fat and excess fat and lose muscle mass. Estrogen is the catalyst, but that leads to decreased sleep, which makes weight gain and weight loss. To, so we end up in these big negative feedback these traffic circles where everything is feeding into where you don't want to be going. Yeah, and so estrogen therapy is one thing, or, menopausal hormone therapy, but, the resistance training, which most of us didn't do. We were working out to be thin, not strong, really focusing on protein and fiber. Like who tracked that? We were all like calories. So low fat, low carb, low this.
Yeah.
And so different. I weigh more now than I did when I started Galveston Diet with my frustrating weight gain, but I just have a lot more muscle now because I busted my ass to get it.
Yeah, and you can,
Totally.
and I think women don't realize, like, you can change this, and you can make these even body composition changes. Like
you can. I've done
redistribution
it. It's work. It is work. It's different work. I had so we have Mardi Gras here, and I pulled out a ball gown, from 4 years that I wore 4 years ago for this last Mardi Gras, and we could not zip it up the back, and it fit in the waist and everything. And my husband's like, "This is your back muscles." It was a strapless gown. It was really good. And I was like, my boobs are bigger. Like what? And he goes, no, it's your back there. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, it's true. You definitely are able to do that.
Just expecting you can just do what you did and have the same level of health and sleep and relationships is not reasonable for most people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Very true.
Or that just, I feel like doctors, when I was first like starting in perimenopause, and I guess I'm kind of still in perimenopause. I don't really know where I'm at this point, but my doctor, I was talking about the weight gain, and she said, "Oh, well, it's your age, and there's really not a lot you can do about it." I'm like, really? Because I think there might be, and I'm going to find a new doctor.
Well, that's the other, my first training was going to get a nutrition certification because I knew nothing.
Yeah.
And here I am trying to help, figure out my own life. And then that's where the culinary medicine thing came from. And then I was like, I know nothing after taking that. I knew nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to just talk about some of the topics that you've shared on social media. And I have like a whole list of them. We don't need to go get through all of them, but you recently talked about alcohol and sleep during menopause. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So this is more anecdotal and talking to followers and patients, in our clinics, and no one's sleeping well, and adding in alcohol, like that tolerance to alcohol and the resilience to the alcohol changes, especially for me. If I drink, I am choosing not to sleep. And so, and I was like, is anybody, on social, I'll be like, anybody else like this? And it's like, one or two will be like, no, I can drink all I want. I'm like, good for you. But like thousands of comments of, no, I can't. I've quit. I can't have more than one, or I will not sleep. And it's probably body composition changes. The liver is totally changed through the menopause transition. That's why our cholesterol goes up, why our insulin resistance is up, and how we process alcohol is different. Sleep is already a struggle in menopause. And when you add the after effects of alcohol, day drinking seems to be better. Like if you, you have that last drink before 6 hours,
Yeah, you leave that window open.
I know. I think, menopause has made day drinking cool.
I think that's true.
Well, you just mentioned like insulin sensitivity, insulin resistance. Because I do think that that's a big part of this, the weight gain and how estrogen,
right. Like we talked about that traffic circle.
Yeah.
So just, you take two 50-year-old women. One is menopausal and one is not. So one's still cycling and one is totally postmenopausal, which are a normal range. Okay. Mm-hmm. And they're identical twins.
Right.
The postmenopausal patient has a 2 to 3 times higher risk of metabolic syndrome, which includes insulin resistance, hypercholesterolemia, and diabetes, just from being menopausal. That is the clinical significance of going through this change that people aren't realizing. And 80% of my patients, the other thing that blows the internet up is when I say, what happened to your cholesterol in the last 5 years? Yeah. Have you changed your diet and exercise? And they're like, no. But all of a sudden, my cholesterol's jumped up 20, 30, 40, 50 points.
And that happened to me. And, and what do you tell patients to do?
So you must focus on fiber. So we talk, when my patients come to me and, we look at everything that's happened to them, I do the toolkit approach. So we hit nutrition. All right. Are you getting enough fiber consistently? You need minimum 25 grams per day. Okay. Berberine, that might be helpful. A little bit of berberine. It's not going to hurt. Right. Added sugars, limiting those added sugars, excess sugars are more likely to be associated with higher cholesterol levels than excess saturated fat in your diet. So watching those added sugars, making sure you're getting a good mix of unsaturated fats with your, we try to get 2 to 1, twice as much unsaturated fat versus saturated fat.
Right.
And then we HRT. The last thing we talk about is a statin, especially for a woman who has a new elevation of cholesterol. Now, she has a family history. She's had high hypercholesterolemia since she was in her 20s or 30s, well before any of this chronic illness, chronic inflammation stuff started. That's a different story. But statins, beta blockers, and aspirin have never been shown to decrease the risk of a primary heart attack in a woman, only in men. Yet they are routinely recommended for the prevention of cardiovascular disease with no science to back it up.
Yes.
Wow.
This is what we're talking about when we talk about misogyny in medicine. We are not little men.
Yeah.
Right.
We are more than our breast tissue. Our breasts are important, but like the major healthcare decisions for women in this country, in most civilized countries, are made based on the fear of breast cancer. And most women die of heart attack or dementia with 2 to 1 nursing home, 2 to 1 female to male nursing home admission. So yeah, we're living 6 years longer than men in a nursing home. No, thank you.
Right.
Just let me die.
Yeah.
Some researchers are like, well, women live longer than men. I'm like, they live horribly longer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Demented, chronic disease, illness. We live 20% of our total lifespan in poorer health than our male counterparts. Why is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing too, and I think, we are living longer, right? As a society, women are living longer than men. But we don't, I feel like we're living more of our lives in post-menopause than in peri, just because of the length of time that we're living.
Right.
30 years as postmenopausal people. Yeah.
Totally.
And it's, oh my God. All right. Talk to us about hormone replacement therapy. Mm-hmm. I know, I'm a huge proponent of this. I just started taking it. I'm 53. I started in November, I guess. And I mentioned, all of these things that some of the symptoms I actually didn't even know I had that all of a sudden I didn't have anymore.
Well,
and I'm like,
crazy.
Right?
I hear that from my patients all the time. They're like, I didn't realize it, but my hip pain is gone, and so if you go through the toolkit part and all those symptoms, I mean, that's where all that came from. That was all informed by my patients and social media. So hormone replacement therapy. So we talk about menopausal hormone therapy, whether you begin in perimenopause or wherever you are in your menopausal journey, you are a candidate for hormone therapy. Okay. And so when we talk about hormones, there's 3 kind of buckets. We have the estrogens, the androgens, which includes testosterone, and then the progestogens. Mm-hmm. So the estrogens, we have body identical, which means chemically identical to what your body can make. So there's a bunch of those, but the 3 main ones are estradiol. That's the main one. Estradiol is the dominant estrogen in our reproductive years. It's created by the ovary. It is the most biologically active. It is the one that has low inflammatory profile. It's the good one. Estriol is what our placentas make in pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And then we have estrone, which becomes the dominant estrogen in postmenopause, and it's created from precursors that are then converted in our fat cells, usually in the periphery, outside of the ovary. Once we go through menopause, remember our eggs are gone. We've lost all of our eggs, and no way where for us to ovulate, so we can't create that estrogen factory from the ovary anymore. So when we talk about, and then there's synthetic estrogens, which are what's in a lot of birth control pills. And then there's Premarin, which is very natural, but it comes from pregnant mare urine, and it is conjugated equine estrogens, equine for horse. And so that was the predominant estrogen used for, decades. It was cheap. It was easy to get. Not really used much anymore. Most in my world use estradiol. One, because we know what it does. We know what it works. The problem with Premarin, one, besides I don't like what they do to the horses to get it, but is that there's dozens of estrogen derivatives in it. And we're not sure what all their functions are and why there's horse estrogens in there. Like, so, but the data we have on like cardiovascular disease prevention is all from Primer. So, you know, an estrogen's an estrogen, but like, I want to give you back what your body made. For the progestins, we have progesterone, which is what your ovary makes. And then there's progestins, and there's a zillion of them, different forms of progesterone. And that's how Big Pharma makes their money, is they keep coming up with new ones and claiming they do new things. And I like having options. Not all patients tolerate progesterone. I was on a progestin for, the first 3 years of my menopause when I was on the Combi patch. But the latest safety data, you know, the stuff I was concerned about, said that oral micronized progesterone had the best safety profile. So I switched, you know, to just a plain estradiol patch. And then the oral micronized progesterone. And then there's the androgens, which includes testosterone, again, optional, not traditionally part of menopause hormone therapy, but I use it a lot in patients with hypoactive sexual desire disorder and osteoporosis, osteopenia, and sarcopenia.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. I was wondering about the testosterone, like why
off-label, you know, the sexual like Ishwish and the sexual medicine people really like it. And like, you know, we have testosterone receptors like estrogen everywhere in our body. And they really feel like most women, you know we have kind of an andropause for us, and we lose about 50% of our testosterone production, which often becomes, you know, part of our hypoactive sexual desire disorder. And it really works well for a lot of patients to bring that level of desire back up. But they feel like it really helps with brain function, mental health, cognition, all of that.
Wow. So what's the difference then between compounded and FDA approved?
So compounded means one man in a lab mixes. Traditionally compounded meant you go to your local guy who mixes it up right there. Okay. There's no one from the government coming to test it to make sure it's okay. There's no regulation or anything of it. And we use compounding a lot for like topical numbing agents or some of the vaginal suppositories we use for kind of esoteric infections. It's a great option to have. And I love our compounding pharmacists. FDA approved means it's made in a regulated facility, usually in bulk. And they go in, they test it. There's a 98% chance of what they say is in it. Is it actually in it due to testing? And so for most of us, FDA approved options are preferable, and they're covered by insurance. So, you know, an estrogen progesterone combo, my patients can usually get it for about $30 a month with or without insurance. Wow. So it's very affordable, you know, for most people, pretty affordable and really easy to use and well tolerated. The problem with testosterone is that there is no FDA approved option. And you want to talk about people who love to get involved in women's healthcare in the state of Texas, you know, after a Texas state legislator is a Texas state pharmacist. So if I tried to write to give her the man's version of testosterone, all hell breaks loose. Okay. Wow. It's really hard to find a guy out in Lubbock who, I'm just making this up, you know, who is going to on Lubbock, you know, a pharmacist out in Lubbock who's going to feel comfortable outside of a compounding pharmacy giving her the men's option. I get these letters. You can't give this. It's for men. It's not FDA approved. And I'm like, oh my God, testosterone is in all of our bodies. We have more testosterone than estradiol when you look at like actual amounts in our bodies. Right. The precursor to estradiol is testosterone. It's part of the factory, you know?
Wow.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about, you know, you hear these terms estrogen dominance and hormonal imbalance. What does that mean?
So nothing. Those are not medical. Okay. Those are marketing terms. I would never tell a patient she was estrogen dominant. That is, okay. So in the absence of being able to walk into your OB-GYN's office and get a reasonable visit for menopause care, a cottage industry popped up. Okay. Women were desperate. They wanted help. And I have to think these providers were just doing their best. And I think the word estrogen dominance just kind of came from someone who trying to explain a very complicated endocrinological phenomenon. But basically what an estrogen dominance means, if the person even knows what they're talking about, is that you're not ovulating regularly, which is what happens in PCOS. It happens in perimenopause. I would tell the patient, I think you have polycystic ovarian syndrome. This is because you're probably insulin resistant and you're not able to get the right signaling through the you know, just to say your hormones are imbalanced and you have is not anything to do with the root cause, but it is used horrifically across social media to try to sell supplemental products. And so let's balance your hormones. I got dozens. Which one we balancing? Leptin, ghrelin? Right. So it's clever marketing. It's preying on women's lack of knowledge. So my book is to make you more resilient to these charlatans who's trying to sell you crap, so that you understand what's happening in your body in layman's terms, so that you can make an informed decision and choice and not fall prey because you're so desperate to have help.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think your book does a good job of that. It even goes so far. I mean, I think finding the right doctor is incredibly difficult. I think finding the doctor that just doesn't push you off. I mean, I want to find a new doctor, just because, I don't think that I've been treated, fairly and well, but
well, you're 60 and you're
I'm
not
60
on HRT.
And I'm not on HRT, so that I haven't, paid that much of attention.
You haven't had the right conversation yet.
Yeah. And it's just I think so too. And I think women are nervous to have that conversation with their doctor.
And they shouldn't be. It's everyone goes through it. 100% of us. We're all menopausal people right now.
Yeah.
And on this talk, and it's you may choose not to have it, but you never got the right conversation.
No.
You were never allowed to make an informed choice.
Right.
And, so talking about that and being your own advocate, right? And we've talked to a lot of different doctors on this podcast, and that always comes up. It's like a theme, especially in this hormone health space. But how do doctors respond to that when patients come in and they're asking the questions and they're,
So I have a series of resources that I have on my website. A list, it's called the Menopause Empowerment Guide, and it has questions to ask your doctor, how to schedule an appointment, how to find one that's menopausal. And, it's worked. I've gotten feedback. Thank you so much. This totally worked. My doctor was open. Da, da. And sometimes they're like, asshole. Nope. Wouldn't even listen to me. Threw it in the trash. So that's a red flag, right? That's So I can't promise you anything, but going in, look, doctors want easy. And if you go in and say something like, let me just try it for 3 months, I'll come back and let you know. Let me have this. Here's a research article that I read, and I think I would like to try this, and I'm willing to take the risk myself. Can I try it for 3 months?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I'll come back and tell you how it worked for me. That makes it so easy for your healthcare provider. And they'll be like, sure, you just took 10 minutes of work off my plate,
Totally.
And then you'll teach them
for the next time.
They'll maybe offer it to someone else.
I mean, I think it even happens to women who've been going to the same doctor for years and years and years, and they believe what they say.
You can't expect your fabulous OB-GYN to live with your babies and to take great care of you to know a damn thing about menopause care, because I trained them and I didn't teach them anything.
There was another study that I just wanted to touch on real quick. You talked about recently with GLP-1s, and we've touched a little bit on Ozempic on this podcast.
Yeah, so there was it was published in the Journal of Menopause, and it looked at patients on semaglutide, who were on different levels. That you start low and you work your way up on semaglutide.
Sure.
And then they tracked who of those patients were on HRT or not on HRT, and they age matched them. So they took two groups of similar patients, one group on HRT, one group not, both on semaglutide, and followed them. The patients on HRT and semaglutide lost 30% more weight.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Because their insulin resistance was less, because they held on to more muscle, because, it's we see it in our clinics. I knew that was happening, but to see it in a study was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you are an advocate of
those drugs
in the right patient.
Really,
it's a tool. It is a tool in your toolkit. You do not go take those injections and expect a miracle.
It's an amazing tool that all of a sudden
you need the support, though. Your long-term success on getting the incretins is dependent on the knowledge of your physician, just like HRT. You go to some walk-in clinic, here's your shot, your pellets, your whatever crazy they're trying to put in you. Your long-term health benefits are going to vary very differently based on how that doctor is with you may have some short-term weight loss, but and I understand the power in that when someone struggled their whole lives with a weight problem and finally something's working. But without the proper protein intake, before we have a patient, most of my patients come to us for menopause care, and we take an hour to unpack their menopause trauma, get their history down, go through all the options. And then, okay, we come up, they go for 3 months. We give them a whole nutrition plan, knowing they're coming back in 3 months to discuss getting on a semaglutide. But I need to make sure they can eat the protein, they can eat the fiber, they can do the resistance training, that they can get the lifestyle stuff down. Then we start.
That
so
is
we
so
know
important.
they're successful and we're not hurting them in the long run because they've lost so much muscle.
Yeah, exactly.
That's incredible.
And
I
that
love
they know
that you
what
do
to
that.
do after
Yeah.
they go off these drugs. They know,
Yeah.
how,
I mean,
what
so
they-
we work on lifestyle first, hormone therapy, get everything in alignment. Then they, a good 3 months of new habits, new changes. Everybody's ready. She's read about it. Like we prep them. They come in, we do 30 minutes of counseling on these are, you may never be able to come off of it. It's expensive. Like here are the side effects. You may have to switch medications. All the things. And then we start.
Does anyone find that they've lost weight just in those 3 months and then they think they don't need to go on?
A few.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I would think that would be the case.
That was my job.
I know. Because
everybody's excited and they want the semaglutide. I'm like, listen, but they want to do it. We're not a quick weight loss clinic. That is not what we do.
Yeah,
we are here so you can roll on the floor at 80 with your grandchildren. That's what we're focusing on.
Right.
That's what everybody should be striving for, and they don't even know it.
They don't even realize.
Like, I don't even have grandchildren. I'm not going to have grandchildren.
Most likely going to make that happen.
Yeah. I want to kind of touch on. You talked about this in the Galveston diet, intermittent fasting, and your thoughts on that for perimenopause and postmenopause. Do you have a different opinion for women that fall on either side?
So not for peri, and there's no data, though everyone loves her and she's very sweet, to really justify like changing your fasting schedule based on what time of your cycle you are. There's just not enough data to support that. But looking at like people I really respect, the Stacy, like people in the muscle-centric world who are all focused on strength and mobility with aging, they worry about fasting because it's really hard to get enough protein in that shorter window. So like I used to do a 16-8. I still do it occasionally, but because I'm more protein centric and Gabrielle Lyon from Forever Strong is my really good friend. And she's like, how much protein did you eat today? So I've shortened my window to like 12,
Yeah.
It's so natural and easy for me. Like that doesn't feel like I'm doing anything different. It's not a push. And so, it's flexible. I think it has some great anti-inflammatory benefits if done right. I think you definitely can overdo it. But, we are not focused on the number on the scale. I have a body scanner in my office. We're looking at muscle mass and visceral fat. Those are the two things we focus on.
Yeah.
Because those are the things that are going to keep you out of the nursing home.
Right. Yeah. That's the most
important. The lack of one and the addition of the other. And so, good protein intake. And if you can't get it in 8 hours, then you need to open your window up.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does. I just, I always hear all these conflicting things about it. And I love Gabrielle Lyon's book, Forever Strong, too.
I know. She kind of uses it as a little bit of
I
a Bible.
do. I kind of I'm always referring to it for the protein because a lot of my clients, they think it's too much. They're like, how am I supposed to eat that much protein?
Right. I mean, when I'm like introducing these protein levels to the patients, I'm like, basically for some of them, it's doubling their protein intake.
Mm-hmm, sure.
And like, you can't do that overnight. You're going to freak out and die. Like, let's give it 3 months. The first month, add another 10, then add another 10, then add another 10. Find ways to get that protein in there. So and mentally it's a beat down because you're so used to calorically restricting and even today I broke my fast really early and I was scrambling to find some protein. My husband and I, we're empty nesting and we're trying to adjust to not having kids. And I'm so tired of the mental load of feeding my family. And so I'm just kind of like, how long are we going to go before he goes to the store?
Yes.
And so I'm like, ah! So I had a piece of whole grain toast and I was like, when's the last time I had bread, at 9 a.m?
Oh, I want to talk about, speaking of intermittent fasting, what is your take on fed workouts versus fasted workouts for women?
So I'm a fasted workout person.
You are? Okay.
Just because I get it done in the morning and then I'll break my fast after. What's happened with me is that I used to not break my fast till noon, even if I worked out in the morning. But now that, again, trying to get more protein in and watching my muscles grow, I do better if I'm going to eat within that first hour or so of workout.
Yeah.
So I'm eating now by like 10 instead of noon.
Okay.
On the days I'm working from home. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, we've been, so we both use the Lumen to like measure our metabolic. Numbers in the morning.
Yeah. Well, no,
not the ketones. It does like it's the CO2. So you blow into this little device, and it'll tell you like if you're burning mostly fat or mostly carbs. And so I've kind of been using that a little bit as a guide because I always did fasted workouts as well, and then I started to notice I was I guess most people are waking up in fat burn, ideally. And then I would go through my workouts and I wouldn't have the energy to get through the workout because I'd already burned through all my carbs already and all my, and so I'm like, all right, so now I started eating before, but it kind of depends on if I wake up in the morning and I'm still in carb burn, then I won't eat and I'll do a fasted workout. So I was just curious to get your thoughts.
Yeah. Kind of.
So I'm much less cardio than I ever was. Like the cardio I do now is like walking on my treadmill with a weighted vest instead of like running or jumping, or I used to run marathons. That's all done. I'm done with that. And so, and I do a few sprints. Like if I'm doing a cardiovascular workout, I'm just doing like 10 sprints for 30 seconds each. That's it, So, but so it's not, back in the running days, I couldn't go run more than 45 minutes. I'd have to eat. So I'd have a banana or something, but now that it's all weight training, as long as I like get some protein in me within an hour of finishing weightlifting, then I'm okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you typically get that protein in food, or is that in a supplement?
Food.
Food, always food. Mm-hmm. Okay. I guess, speaking of like supplements and things, what, you always see these ads, and again, back to social media, and it's like, it'll, speed up your metabolism, dissolve your fat, like all these things. What can people look for when they're looking at these different products so they're not like
if it's promising something like that, no, run.
Yeah.
It's not good at all. I probably did all that in college, if it promises a miracle cure, you get your sex life back, I lost 20 pounds overnight, whatever, steer clear. Nothing is going to replace the estrogen in your body. Now, we tend to be deficient in fiber. We tend to be very deficient in vitamin D as menopausal people. So those are things I recommend supplementing all the time if you can't get them from food.
Right.
So omega-3s can be really powerful. Turmeric can be really powerful. I take collagen every day. My husband takes some of that NAD. He follows Peter T and all those people.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I don't, I got enough going on. So, I do creatine. As part of my osteoporosis prevention. And
I saw that. That was a recommendation. Yeah.
I do creatine. There's great studies on menopausal women with creatine.
Do you do it every day? Do you have your creatine every day? You do. Okay.
It's easy. So I have those element powders,
Oh, yeah, sure.
And the creatine's tasteless. So I just dump it in here.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
I was doing that, and then I got away from doing that. I don't know. I'm like,
you go through waves, I think, when you're trying to, it's like, okay, I'm going to try this now.
I'm going to do my omega-3 vitamin D combo every day. My collagen, my fiber, creatine. When I'm like drinking the water, I'll put the creatine in there. And then I do the magnesium.
We are big proponents of that.
I love that.
We are big proponents of that.
Oh my gosh, it's helped so much with sleep.
It's incredible. That
really
is a
the
magic.
Progesterone, the oral progesterone also, I feel like helps.
Boy, if I forget my progesterone,
you feel the difference, right? Yeah.
This thing tells me.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that definitely. But the magnesium. But for your fiber, what do you use for that?
So I make my own.
You do?
Yeah, I sell a few supplements. So full disclosure to your followers. So,
okay.
We started with fiber and vitamin D, the vitamin D omega-3 combo, and so now we're having creatine by this weekend. It's funny. By the time this comes out, we'll have our creatine. We have our collagen. Wow. We have turmeric. I don't need the turmeric, so that's really for arthritic and inflammatory stuff. But I've been fine without it. And
So that's cool. I struggle with that a little bit. So I had gotten inulin powder, and I was putting inulin in my shakes and things like that. But I don't know. I tend to feel bloated after that. Like I think it's
so
too
there's
much.
adjustment period when my patients start the fiber. I'm like, start with a teaspoon of this because the scoop is 8 grams. Your gut needs to adjust. This is the food for the gut microbiome. So if they're used to having, your 12 today and now you're going to give it 25, you're going to know.
Right. Right.
So
Yikes.
if you ease into it over a few weeks and just gently increase the dosage every day,
Okay.
the gastrointestinal will get a lot better.
Okay. I will try that.
That's
definitely.
incredible.
Can you tell us about, I read that you are doing a docuseries with Alyssa Milano.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So it's called The Balance docuseries, and it's these filmmakers. She's one of the producers.
Okay.
These filmmakers from San Antonio area who are monks.
Okay.
But they're like documentarians. They did the surviving sex trafficking documentary.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, these two ladies in these white gowns and these buns walk in and you're like, whoa, but man, they are incredible. So they came to Galveston. They met me at my house. We filmed for 8 hours of them I was just vomiting everything I knew about menopause up. Then they came to clinic and we saw patients. The patients had signed releases before and they knew the crew would be there. And they filmed me taking care of patients all day. And they've done several docs around the country, a lot of the menopause, my friends.
Wow.
And they flew all over. And so they're putting it all together into a documentary about menopause.
That is crazy.
That's
when
incredible.
will that come out? Do you know?
October. So Menopause Awareness Month, I think it's coming out.
Okay.
And then they're coming next week for a second documentary. This one is for PBS. Tamsin Fadal is one of the producers.
Yes, we've talked to her here, actually. Yeah.
They're coming to film me in clinic again.
Tell us about your website, The Pause Life, and what people can find on there.
So at our website, we have all of our resources. We have tons of blogs, information, quizzes, downloadables, links to the nutrition program for Galveston Diet, how to buy our books and our supplements. And it just really, and then there's a community link as well. So we have this awesome online community. We answer questions. We have little contests. We have challenges, just to kind of, it's a place for people to vent and dump and get their questions answered.
Right.
Oh, fun. I love that.
Incredible.
Well, I don't think we need to tell our listeners your social media handles
Everyone
because you've
seems
got that covered.
Find you. But yeah, I mean, we really appreciate your taking the time. I mean, it's so funny. All these things that I think just didn't exist before, and now, thank God they exist. Thank God there's people like you out there that are
educating people and educating more doctors, which I think is
that's really
that's my
huge.
Next big mission.
Yeah.
Just kicking that off now.
Yeah,
So.
that's a big
absolutely
one.
So once again, the book is The New Menopause. Is out now. It is an excellent book. I loved it. I learned things that I wish I had known, and now I do. And so thank you, Dr. Mary Clare Haver, for joining us on Everybody Talks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, so that was a crash course in menopause.
Sure was. Yeah.
That was
I had so many questions and I felt like I was all over the place because she has so much to say on this topic.
Yes, she really knows what she's talking about.
I mean, if people don't follow her on Instagram, Dr. Mary Clare Haver, go follow her. But I'm sure that everyone listening probably already does.
I know.
Because she has 4 million followers.
I know so many people have mentioned her as like we should have her on.
Yeah.
As a guest.
And now we did.
She
was fantastic.
Yeah.
I really liked her.
She talks about a lot of supplements you should take just every day, but we're lucky enough that we do take.
Oh yeah, we take a lot of that stuff in the Revival.
Right, the essentials by Revival. Like berberine is in there.
The omegas and the vitamin D.
All of that stuff is in there, and it's nice to know that we're
ahead of the game.
We're ahead of the game.
Yeah.
We are supplemented.
See, it's not too late. To your question that you always ask, it's not too late.
That I constantly ask, it's not too late. I'm trying to head it off at the pass.
And you're taking Revival Essentials.
Yes, and we're taking the essentials. And if you want to try the essentials and get some of the supplements you need that are made for women by women, you could put in the code EBT20 and get a discount.
And you have to tell them where to go to get it, though. Revival revival.com/shop.
There you go. So anyway, this was an eye opener. I feel like it was a lot to digest.
Yeah.
So hope that,
it was. I mean, she has so many of these different topics on her social media that like I really couldn't get to them all.
Yeah, you were like banging them out.
I still didn't. Well, I got to, I think most of the ones I wanted to talk
I think
about.
that you did. I felt like you did most.
Did
of the
I?
list there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, she was very informative. I just felt a little.
It's okay. You did great.
Not myself. I don't know why. I think I was a little nervous because I was like anticipating her coming on, and I was like,
yeah, we were looking forward to
excited.
it for a while. Yeah. Anyway, we hope you learned as much as we did in this episode. I'm Lori Schulweis.
And I'm Jen Giamo.
This was Everybody Talks.
Talk to you next time.
Take care.
For more information about our podcast, to learn more about us, and to catch up on all of our episodes, go to our website at everybodytalkspodcast.com.
Follow us on Instagram at Shuli, at Jen Giamo, and at Everybody Talks. And if you want to watch today's episode, go to our YouTube channel at Everybody Talks Podcast.
Join the Everybody Talks community by checking out our Facebook page where you can ask questions, post comments, and be part of the conversation.
And don't forget, if you like what you've heard, give us a 5-star rating, write a review, and tell a friend. We're for everybody and everybody. The Everybody Talks podcast is co-created, executive produced, and hosted by us, Lori Schulweis and Jen Giamo. Produced and edited by Eric Jackowitz.
Our theme song music is written and performed by Jackie Ryle and Aaron Navisi, with additional support from our pups, Oliver, Milo, and Murray.
Talk to you next time.